When Robert Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg brought Back to the Future to the screen, they didn't rely on computers or digital shortcuts. Instead, they built time travel using real cars, real fire, miniature explosions, and carefully designed illusions. Every decade jump, from 1955 to 1985, from 2015 to 1885, was crafted by hand. And today, we're going behind the scenes to see how the filmmakers turned a simple sports car into cinema's most iconic time machine, how fire trails were burned into real roads, how flying cars, hoverboards, and even steam trains were brought to life without modern CGI. So buckle up, because this is the hidden craftsmanship behind all three parts of Back to the Future. The futuristic car you see in Back to the Future wasn't built inside a sci-fi laboratory, but it was one of the greatest production design achievements in film history. The Delorean time machine started as a completely normal sports car and evolved into the most famous vehicle ever put on screen. The filmmakers chose a real car, the Delorean DMC-12, released in 1981 to 82. Its stainless steel body and gull-wing doors already made it look futuristic, which instantly caught director Robert Zemeckis' attention. Originally, the time machine was supposed to be a refrigerator or a static device, but Steven Spielberg rejected that idea, worried kids might try to copy it at home. Turning the time machine into a car made it dynamic, cinematic, and exciting. Once the DeLorean was finalized, the production design team made a bold, creative choice. The time machine should look homemade, not factory-built. It needed to feel like something Doc Brown assembled in his garage, not in a billion-dollar lab. That's why the car was covered with exposed wires, pipes, tubes, vents, blinking lights, and metal parts. None of these were real scientific machines. They were carefully designed props meant purely for visual storytelling. The rule was simple: nothing should look hidden. Science had to be visible. One of the most unforgettable moments in cinema history is when the DeLorean hits 88 miles per hour, vanishes, and leaves behind two blazing lines of fire on the road. What makes this effect legendary is that it was done practically, not digitally. To make time travel feel like a real physical event, the filmmakers installed two parallel metal pipes directly into the road, aligned exactly with the car's tires. These pipes were filled with propane gas and connected to controlled ignition systems. The scene was filmed in two separate shots for safety. First, the DeLorean raced through the frame at high speed. In the second shot, the car was gone, and the propane was ignited, creating perfectly straight fire trails. Both shots were later combined using optical compositing, making it look like the car vanished in a burst of fire. A smart trick was also used. The road was kept slightly wet. This allowed the flames to reflect on the surface, making the effect more dramatic and cinematic. One of the most intense moments in Back to the Future Part 2 happens at night, when Biff corners Marty on the terrace and nearly shoots him, forcing Marty to jump for his life. On screen, the scene looks incredibly dangerous, but behind the scenes, it was a brilliant example of smart, controlled, practical filmmaking. This sequence was not filmed on a real rooftop. Instead, it was shot entirely on an indoor studio soundstage, where the filmmakers had full control over everything: lighting, height, safety, camera angles, and actor movement. This allowed them to create the illusion of extreme danger without putting anyone at real risk. The flying DeLorean seen hovering in mid-air wasn't a full metal car. It was a lightweight fiberglass replica, specially built for suspension work. The car was hung from above using heavy-duty steel wires and a crane rigging system, carefully balanced so it appeared stable and believable. This setup allowed Marty, or in wider shots, his stunt double, to safely stand on the car without it shaking or tilting. For safety, the actor was also secured with a hidden harness, which was later removed during post-production. Marty's dramatic jump wasn't filmed in a single shot. First, the jump itself was captured from a controlled height using safety mats. In a separate shot, Marty was filmed standing on the suspended DeLorean. These two shots were later merged using optical compositing, frame by frame, to make it look like he jumped directly onto the flying car. At the time, CGI was extremely limited, so this process was slow and highly precise. Every frame had to align perfectly for the illusion to work. There was also a technical reason this scene takes place at night. Darkness made it much easier to hide wires, rigs, and safety equipment. Through controlled lighting, the filmmakers guided the audience's attention only toward Marty and the DeLorean, keeping the suspension system completely invisible. The result is a scene that still feels believable today, a perfect mix of practical effects, stunt coordination, wire work, and classic optical tricks, creating one of the most memorable moments in Back to the Future Part 2 without relying on heavy CGI. The futuristic version of Hill Valley shown in Back to the Future Part 2 wasn't meant to be a realistic prediction of the future. It was a reflection of 1980s imagination. Director Robert Zemeckis and writer Bob Gale had a clear vision. The future should feel fun, colorful, and optimistic, not dark, robotic, or dystopian. That's why the 2015 Hill Valley looks familiar, yet upgraded, like the present day, just smarter, cleaner, and more stylish. This entire futuristic city was physically built on Universal Studios' famous Hill Valley Town Square backlot, the same location used for the 1955 and 1985 versions. Instead of building a brand new set, the filmmakers transformed the existing town by layering futuristic elements on top. New glass structures, metallic panels, neon lighting, hologram-style advertisements, and flying vehicle landing zones were added to the buildings. The base architecture stayed the same, but visually, it felt like the town had evolved over decades. Production designer Rick Carter wanted the future to feel livable, not alien. He believed that even in the future, people wouldn't abandon nature or comfort completely. That's why the town square still features greenery, water fountains, ponds, and open public spaces. The buildings look more high-tech, but their layout still feels familiar, just cleaner, brighter, and more advanced. The most iconic symbol of the 2015 future was the hoverboard, a flying skateboard that became legendary overnight. In reality, hoverboards didn't exist. What the audience saw was a clever, practical illusion. Actors and stunt performers were filmed using hidden wires, platforms, and specially designed rigs that allowed them to slide and move above the ground. These support systems were later removed in post-production, and shadows were added to sell the illusion that the board was floating. Because the effect was so convincing and relied heavily on real movement rather than animation, many viewers genuinely believed hoverboards were real for years after the film's release. Together, the practical sets, physical props, and optical effects turned Hill Valley 2015 into one of the most memorable future worlds in cinema, built not with CGI but with creativity, craftsmanship, and imagination. When Marty McFly travels back to the year 1885 in Part 3, the world he enters feels completely raw, dangerous, and unforgiving. And that realism wasn't created on a soundstage alone. The filmmakers deliberately avoided heavy green screens and artificial backdrops. Instead, they chose real outdoor locations to make sure the audience felt that Marty was truly cut off from the modern world. The 1885 version of Hill Valley was physically constructed near Red Hills Ranch in Jamestown, California. This wasn't a small set or a painted background. It was a full-scale Old West town. Saloon buildings, wooden storefronts, dirt roads, horse stands, and railway areas were all built from the ground up. Actors could walk naturally through the town, horses could run freely, and dust would rise organically with every movement, giving the environment a natural, lived-in feel. Because everything was real and physical, the town didn't just look authentic, it felt authentic. This helped sell the idea that Marty had landed in a harsh, unpredictable era where survival wasn't guaranteed. As Marty exits the DeLorean and finds himself surrounded by horse riders and cavalry, the scale of the Old West opens up dramatically. These wide shots were filmed in real desert and rocky terrains across California, including locations inspired by iconic Western landscapes like Monument Valley, a place legendary for classic Hollywood Westerns. The towering rock formations and endless horizons instantly communicate isolation and danger. There was no CGI used for these chase scenes. Hundreds of trained horses and professional riders were involved, including Native American riders and U.S. cavalry performers wearing historically inspired costumes. High-speed chases were carefully planned and executed by experienced stunt riders, while Michael J. Fox's close-ups were filmed separately for safety. Managing horses on uneven, rocky terrain was one of the biggest challenges, so every movement was rehearsed to balance realism with safety. Marty's terrifying encounter with the bear inside the cave was also handled mostly through practical effects. A real, trained bear was used under the strict supervision of professional animal handlers. The bear's movements were controlled using food cues and hand signals, ensuring precise reactions without putting the actor in danger. For more risky angles, the filmmakers used forced perspective techniques, and in some cases, a man-in-suit setup to maintain safety. The cave interior itself was a controlled set, where lighting and camera placement were carefully designed to amplify tension and fear. The train sequence in Part 3 is widely considered the most ambitious and emotional scene in the entire trilogy. In this finale, Doc Brown, Marty McFly, and Clara Clayton use a steam locomotive to push the Delorean to 88 miles per hour, the only logical solution in an era without gasoline, highways, or modern engines. This idea wasn't just about spectacle. It was designed to bring the story to a meaningful, emotional close. The steam locomotive seen on screen was not a prop, but a real vintage steam engine from the late 19th century, one that had already appeared in multiple Western films. The production team modified the engine with wooden cow catchers, pipes, and period detailing to ensure historical accuracy. For shots where the train pushes the DeLorean, the real engine was used. However, for safety reasons, the train often moved at slower speeds, with camera angles and editing creating the illusion of extreme velocity. The most dramatic moment, when the train plunges into the ravine and explodes, was not filmed with a real locomotive. Instead, Industrial Light and Magic built highly detailed miniature models of the train and bridge. These miniatures were destroyed in a controlled environment using real pyrotechnics. High-speed cameras captured the explosions, debris, steam bursts, and collapsing structures in stunning detail. The footage was then seamlessly blended with live-action shots. Because CGI was limited, all fire, smoke, sparks, twisting metal, and breaking wood were created using real practical effects. Sound design played a crucial role, layering steam whistles, metal tearing, explosions, and echoes to give the scene its massive impact. What makes Back to the Future truly timeless isn't just its story, it's the craftsmanship behind it. From flying cars and futuristic cities to dusty western towns and explosive train finales, the trilogy relied on practical effects, real locations, and creative filmmaking, not digital shortcuts. So if you enjoyed our deep dive behind-the-scenes video of Back to the Future, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more cinematic behind-the-scenes breakdowns, and let me know in the comments which movie you want explored next.